We are a full-service marketing and public relations agency. We help our clients meet their business objectives through market research, media relations, direct mail and email marketing, and content strategy and development, including websites, video, collateral materials, and more. We work with corporations and nonprofit organizations of all sizes and have seen firsthand the value of entrepreneurial-minded people in many different industries. So we are very interested, as we hope you are, to hear from Carla today and have a discussion on how to foster that kind of thinking. I'd now like to take a moment to recognize our in-kind sponsor, Flight Creative Media, who are filming today's event, and our table sponsors, First National Bank of Northfield and Northfield Retirement Community. Today's silver event sponsors are Engage Print and Gray Plant Moody. Now I'd like to invite Ryan Palmer of Gray Plant Moody to the podium.
Thanks. Good morning, everybody, and welcome. It's my pleasure to be among those who welcome you to this presentation on cultivating entrepreneurial spirit. I'm a principal at Gray Plant Moody down the street here in our Minneapolis office, and we work with our clients, our business owners and entrepreneurs every day to help them solve all of their legal issues. And whatever issues on the table, one thing we notice that is consistently important is an entrepreneurial spirit and how important that is to the success of an organization. So we are excited this morning to hear ideas about how businesses can cultivate that spirit and create an environment where it will live and thrive. On behalf of all of us at Gray Plant and offices in Minneapolis, St. Cloud, Washington, D.C., and Fargo, welcome, and thanks to our friends at Neuger Communications for producing this great series and this event this morning. We hope you enjoy. Thanks.
Thank you, Ryan. Thanks to the support of our sponsors and all of you here today, proceeds from this event will benefit the Neighborhood Development Center. As a nationally recognized model of community development done right, Neighborhood Development Center assists local entrepreneurs with culturally competent wraparound business services so that they can start and grow businesses that enrich their economic and social fabric. Here today to tell us more about the important work of this wonderful organization, our Director of Development and Communications, Elisa Pluhar, and Chief Program Officer, Isabel Chancellor.
There we go. Good morning, everyone. We've just got 5 minutes here. I hope that you've all had enough coffee to be sort of awake for this. Really quick, we're going to tell you about the Neighborhood Development Center and the work that we're specifically doing with small business entrepreneurs in specific neighborhoods of Minneapolis and St. Paul. There we go. So the NDC approach, we believe in the power, drive, and daring of neighborhood entrepreneurs to actually revitalize their own communities. So how do we do this work? We provide 4 core services: entrepreneur training, small business lending, technical assistance, and real estate incubators. How many of you have been to the Midtown Global Market? Yay! So that's an NDC small business incubator. So all those businesses within the Midtown Global Market are being incubated. Isabel, do you want to talk a little more?
Yeah, so we've been around for about almost 25 years coming up next year. We've served many, many different neighborhoods in St. Paul and Minneapolis. And the fruits of our labor are kind of evident on the corridors where our work presides. And so that's on University Avenue and Broadway, Lake Street, around Midtown Global Market. We have about 650 businesses that have been in business with us, and through their own energy. And so a lot of those are concentrated. And we do that for a very specific reason, because we want to really change the narrative of these particular neighborhoods. So there was a lot of disinvestment, and now we're putting a lot of investment, and those entrepreneurs are actually the ones that are taking the most risk. We've done about somewhere around 18 million in investments since the beginning of us doing our lending. We've trained about 5,000 entrepreneurs. But the greatest thing about what we do is those particular entrepreneurs that are usually low income, primarily, are really increasing their household income. So it's not just the business that's being developed and creating money into the economy, but their household incomes are increasing about $500 a month per year. And so that's a really big number. And so when you talk about changing people's lives, business change definitely changes people's lives.
Thanks, Isabel. And just to wrap things up, we thought it would be fun to share a video with you of one of the entrepreneurs that we've worked with. It just so happens to be an entrepreneur who is in the Midtown Global Market. And we recently honored this entrepreneur during our annual Entrepreneur Awards for the business to watch. And we think this is just a great way to really demonstrate the work that we do and the importance of these folks in our community.
Hello, my name is Hassan. I am originally from Morocco. I came to Minneapolis in 2013 and I opened Moroccan restaurants in Midtown Global Market April 2016 and I'm very happy to be here. I went to cooking school in 1985 and that's what I've been doing all my life. Also I work with my wife, she's also a professional chef and I had this plan to do family business. I start from zero working just as a cook until I find out about NDC. And like once I took the entrepreneurship class, not even a year later, I had my own restaurant. And that's where I am now. They realized my dream and it was the best opportunity happened to me in my life. So what I find with NDC, I couldn't find it nowhere else, only here in Minneapolis.
So that wraps it up. Thanks so much for the time. I want to thank Neuger Communications also for inviting us, and I look forward to the conversation. Thanks.
Thank you. Now I have the honor of introducing today's speaker. Carla Pavone is the Associate Director of the Gary S. Holmes Center for Entrepreneurship and Program Director of the Minnesota Innovation Corps. Prior to this role, Carla worked in publishing and tech startups and in financial services, leading internal corporate startups, change initiatives, and turnarounds. Please join me in welcoming Carla.
Good morning. You know, this is really a cool event, and I've never been to one. And one of the coolest things about this is it's already been a reunion for me. There are several people that I used to work with who are here, and I'm so glad to see you. So we're going to be talking about cultivating entrepreneurial spirit. And I'm actually going to give you a little bit of work to do as we're going through our conversation. And what I'd like to do first is start out by telling you a little bit about my background and what I'm doing now. So Christine mentioned that I used to work in both first independent startups and then more entrepreneurial activities in a corporate setting. And that was at what is now Ameriprise. And at the time, it was a subsidiary of American Express Financial Advisors. And so I got to experience the roller coaster of entrepreneurship inside the corporation, as well as on an independent basis. Since then, in 2002, I left there and decided to get a Ph.D. in business administration, focusing in, again, on entrepreneurship, and specifically on venture capital. After teaching at University of Missouri, Kansas City, I came back, and I am now part of the Holmes Center for Entrepreneurship. And many of you may be aware that Gary Holmes and his CSM companies is a major force here in the Twin Cities for property development and generally for building community here as well. Gary S. Holmes Center for Entrepreneurship both does stuff internally at the U and reaches out externally. So these are our programs. We do a lot of experiential education. The Minnesota Cup is underway right now. Has anyone in this room ever been a contestant or an entrant in Minnesota Cup? I see a few sort of holding your hands halfway. It's quite an experience. The beauty of the Minnesota Cup is the largest statewide venture competition in the US. We are very lucky for the set of resources that it brings to bear. Over 500 companies applied or were entered into the Minnesota Cup this year, and we're now down to the 80 semifinalists who are now going through a process of getting a lot of advice and support from mentors and from various service providers around the Twin Cities, and we'll be hearing about the outcomes during Startup Week, which will take place in October this year. We also have a program called Grow North, and my colleague Lauren Prodden is here. Grow North is an initiative that General Mills asked us to start to help the Twin Cities and the region become more and more of an innovation hub for food. And then we do programs for women entrepreneurs, and then the thing that I do, MinCore. And what I do is I work with scientists and engineers across the University of Minnesota, the amazing researchers who are doing amazing innovations, for them to understand what it takes to get it out to the market. Do you realize that the University of Minnesota is one of the top entrepreneurial universities in the world? Okay, I'm going to repeat that. In the world, okay? Our technology transfer office was just ranked number 6, up there with places like MIT and Columbia and the University of California systems in terms of the amount of licensing we do and the amount of startups we develop. Why do you care? Because that's economic development in action. And that's also bringing the benefit of all the research that's done at the U, or much of the research that's done to the U, out to society. It's actually very exciting. So I'm on an unending field trip every day. I also teach MBAs. And I teach entrepreneurship, and I teach a course called corporate venturing, which is basically intrapreneurship. And much of what I'm going to be talking about today is from that perspective, from the point of view of especially my intrapreneurship course that I teach and my MBA students, most of whom are part-time MBAs, which means they're very ambitious, up-and-coming people who are working for the employers around the Twin Cities, and many of them are very frustrated. Many of them have entrepreneurial spirit that they would like some help cultivating. So this is what we're going to talk about. First, we're going to explore what is this thing, and we're going to do this by looking at a few entrepreneurs, and I'll ask you to think about that as well. We'll talk about what is entrepreneurial spirit, and then I'm going to shift the conversation. I'm going to talk about how we can focus and channel entrepreneurial spirit through a framework called the entrepreneurial mindset. Then we're going to ride the roller coaster with 3 companies here in the Twin Cities who have had different degrees of entrepreneurial success. And finally, I'll give you a framework to focus in on how we combine this concept of an entrepreneurial mindset in order to cultivate entrepreneurial spirit. Does that sound good? All right. So let's think about the entrepreneurs that we know of. Used to be that entrepreneurs were kind of swashbuckling types, right? Richard Branson, right? Snazzy dresser, and kind of bigger than life. And now, they're the guys in the hoodies, right? Another stereotype. And of course, we have our celebrities. But there are a number of people in this room who are entrepreneurs who don't look or act like any of these three people, right? In the center of your tables, except for this table, there are some notebooks, these little books. And that's an idea book from the Holmes Center for Entrepreneurship that we use as a way to acknowledge people. So we have one table up here that doesn't have any. And what I'd like you to do, and so part of my logic in giving you this book and asking you to do something with it is just for you to realize it's kind of a cool little resource. And it has a number of cool ideas inside of it and cool concepts in it. But what I'd also like you to do is write down one name. I would like you to write down the name of your favorite entrepreneur who is not a public figure, who is not Steve Jobs, who is not Gwyneth Paltrow, who is not any of these three. Your favorite entrepreneur who is not a public figure. Okay, so I'm going to tell you about some of my favorite entrepreneurs. This is Lily Hall. Lily Hall is co-founder of Knock, a very successful marketing agency, and also somebody that is helping to build community out along Glenwood Avenue in the Bryn Mawr, I guess that's the Bryn Mawr neighborhood. And you know, they moved there a number of years ago. They just expanded and moved again, still basically next door. She is a remarkable leader that people know personally, but you don't, and has tremendous impact, but you don't necessarily meet her, see her in the news. These people are social venture entrepreneurs. I'm on the boards of two organizations that focus on cultivating entrepreneurial spirit outside of the large corporate world or the high growth tech kind of world. One of them is Social Venture Partners, and Social Venture Partners helps nonprofits that are at a point of inflection for growth by giving them some money, but then also the partners basically consult to these nonprofits to help them grow very, very dramatically, very quickly. Typically, in the 3 years we work with them, they double and triple in size. Okay. And these are the current batch of people. The guy on the left is Duchesne Drew, who's about to moderate a panel with this group of executive directors. These are social entrepreneurs. These are people building organizations, building impact, a lot like neighborhood development centers. Okay. And we're going to be doing a talk with them in September that those of you who are interested in this space may want to consider, Social Venture Partners Minnesota. And then here's a group of people who are very similar to the kinds of people that come out of neighborhood development centers. These are the graduates from a program from an organization called Women Venture, which focuses in on women who want to become entrepreneurs, most of whom are, like the clients of Neighborhood Development Center, low income and haven't been to business school, but they have entrepreneurial spirit. They want to get going. And this is the graduating class from their program called Guided Business Plan from just a couple of weeks ago. And look how happy they are. One thing to think about with these kinds of entrepreneurs, I contrast them a lot with my MBAs who become entrepreneurs. My MBAs talk about, oh, you know, I'm going to build this business to X number of dollars, and we're going to have X amount of market share, and I'm going to be a serial entrepreneur, so this is my exit strategy. For these guys, and for the entrepreneurs out of Neighborhood Development Center, entrepreneurship is an act of love. Entrepreneurship is an act of love because they are building businesses for their families and for their communities. And this is what builds the fabric of the Twin Cities and other places. Okay. Sometimes cultivating an entrepreneurial spirit is about understanding the motivations of the people who are wanting to do something more than whatever is in their narrow jobs. So let's get more, go back to your list, your names. Now I'd like you to write down what makes those people entrepreneurial. Each of you had a favorite entrepreneur. Write down 3 or 4 characteristics. Not about, oh, they're kind, they have, they're great parents. What about their entrepreneur? How do you know that they have entrepreneurial spirit? How do they express that entrepreneurial spirit? And while you're writing, I'm going to warn you of something. I teach in a business school. And one of the things we do in business school is we cold call. Okay? And that's not calling you up on the phone at dinner. That's pointing at someone who's shrinking in their seat. Okay? All right. So somebody near the cameras back there, yell out a characteristic or two. Visionaries. Okay, thank you. What else? Passion. Yeah. What else? Courageous. Yeah.
Never give up.
Never give up. Persistent. Creativity and problem solver. Yeah. Focused. Collaborative. Some of the time. I'm sorry? Hopeful? Hopeful. Okay, optimistic. Hopeful. Inventive. Diligent. What cool characteristics. Commitment to people. Thank you. So these are positive traits of people with entrepreneurial spirit. Now, within your own organizations, what are the times when you don't, and you don't have to write this down, I'll just ask you to think about this, but I am going to ask you to yell it out. When do you not want someone to be entrepreneurial? When do you want to quash that entrepreneurial spirit? Never? When the job just needs to get done. So I'll tell you, in my past life in the financial services world, Diane, when do we want to quash entrepreneurial spirit? Regulatory. Yes, when it's against the law. When it's against the law. We have a lot of financial services here in the Twin Cities. Okay? I'll give you a totally different world. We had a video about a guy in the food business. There's a lot of regulations in food. There are certain things you don't want people to experiment with in the food business, or they're going to get a lot of people sick, right? We don't want the people operating nuclear plants to get creative, okay? So my point to you, in fact, is that in some contexts, if you're in particular industries, it probably is true that you never want to quash entrepreneurial spirit. But in other cases, at the very least, you want to channel it. Because if you're just being entrepreneurial and you're being courageous and you have passion and you're trying to do lots of cool things, you're always chasing the next shiny thing, right? And so we need to have some degree, and there was the comment about focus, we need to apply discipline, and not just any kind of discipline, some kind of strategic discipline to that. So that's why I want to talk about this concept of the entrepreneurial mindset. The entrepreneurial mindset. And this framework is actually drawn from a book that you can buy from Amazon. Rita McGrath and Ian McMillan are very prominent researchers in the academic entrepreneurship field. At that time, they were at Columbia University. And the reason that they got interested in this was this whole issue of uncertainty. The world is uncertain, so you can't just keep doing what you were doing. But being able to figure out what to do is actually not something you can just completely do from a top-down perspective as well. So you need an entrepreneurial mindset that has a number of characteristics. People use the word passion. This idea of passionately seeking new opportunities. But there are qualifiers to that. Focus, discipline. When I work with entrepreneurs, when I observe the people working with the semifinalists in the Minnesota Cup, the biggest issue for that group is they have more ideas than they know what to do with. And so if they try to do them all, they don't do anything well, and they don't have sufficient resources. So part of it is you want to pursue new ideas, but when you're actually focused, when you're actually doing them, you need to do the right ones, and you need to make sure you have the resources to do that. And which ones are you going to focus on? So this concept of best opportunities. What does that mean? What's best? In your world, so in this table, what's the best opportunity?
Say capitalizing on some of the new demographics going forward.
Okay, some new the trends that are underway. Okay, what's a best opportunity? Drives revenue. Okay.
One that builds on something that you already know something about.
Something that builds on your capabilities and your knowledge. Yeah, I see all kinds of trends in the world that I'm not qualified to do anything with. Okay, and sometimes people refer to the entrepreneurial nexus, which is the combination of the resources at hand, like financial resources, the capabilities, and the more objective aspects of the opportunity, things like demographics. Okay. Execution. Uber is a great example of that right now. They've grown, and now they're stumbling because their focus was more on growth than on truly on addressing really the fabric of an organization. So execution here is not just from an operational perspective, it's also from a cultural perspective. And then this last one is very important. Engage everyone's energies. Everyone's energies. Okay. So now what I'd like to do is ride the roller coaster with 3 different companies. Now, a number of people in this room are in the printing industry, right? Okay. Deluxe got its start printing checks. Printing checks. And it's an old company. Now, you don't need to read the details of this chart. The main thing is look at the line going down. What do you think that line is? Checks. If you had seen, there's a little box to the left there, that's where checks were, I think, in 1995, okay? Deluxe Check, which was the name of the company, was in a business that was disappearing, dying. Okay. Now, I called it Deluxe Check. It's actually not called that anymore, it's just called Deluxe. Okay. How do you think of Deluxe today? Do you have an image of it at all? I'm sorry?
I don't.
You don't, okay? But they are starting to change the perspective. Deluxe has become a supplier to small businesses. Small Business Revolution. That's the guy from Shark Tank in the picture. They have quite a web series. They, in their philanthropic activity, they help the Holmes Center by funding what we call internships, which are basically internships for students with entrepreneurial companies around the Twin Cities. And we basically split the cost of those interns with those companies. So any of you that are smaller, kind of fun, cool companies that are interested in interns, you should contact us. Okay. Deluxe, it is true, doesn't have the broad recognition, but it has developed a niche in the small business world. Now let's look at their financials. This is just the revenues. 2006, 2/3 of their revenue was checks. And if you had looked at 2002, it would have been 90%. 90%. Now, back in 2002, I was teaching MBA students. I was teaching entrepreneurship, corporate venturing. I had a number of deluxe check students in my class who were so angry. They were so frustrated because Deluxe is an incredibly profitable company that didn't want to undermine its profits, and therefore was not pursuing electronic payments. And they actually had the opportunity to buy one of the early companies in the electronic payment space, and they passed on it. And my MBA students were so mad. They were so mad. A couple years later, Deluxe actually acquired a form printing company, a small business form printing company in 2004. In 2004, why would you buy a form printing company, right? Forms are starting to go away, okay? But what it was an entrance into the small business market. Now this picture shows in 2016, their revenues have gone up. In fact, things got a lot worse before they got better. They were always profitable, though. Very profitable because of that check business, check printing business. Okay. Today, that top thing, which is about 1/3 of their business now, is marketing solutions for small business. Web and marketing campaigns. They're basically the marketing agency for small businesses all over America. It's 1/3 of their business from nothing a few years ago. Okay, so everything collapsed. Okay, forms has shrunk. They had a packaging business they sold. Promotional stuff, checks, everything's collapsing, but they are growing because they were able to focus in on an alternative and not just focus on protecting, hoping against hope to protect profits of a very core piece of their business. Now here's a boring company. Has anybody heard of this place? Couple, okay? World leader, headquartered here. Floor cleaning. Floor cleaning. Now that's not exciting, right? Largest market share in the world, headquartered here, okay? So there's a floor cleaner. That thing on the right is something that electrolyzes water. And if you electrolyze water, it splits into two parts. There's the part that cleans, and there's the part that disinfects. And this is like super cool stuff, no chemicals, no pollution, okay? An engineer from Tennant stumbled on this, and this is not a new technology, it just hadn't been applied in this space, okay? And this was about 9 years ago, and Tennant, and this is around the time the Tennant got a new CEO, Chris Killingstadt, who's a very impressive guy. And he really had a vision for that company. And it turned into a set of products called Orbio and a set of machines, cleaning machines, that they call ECH2O. Okay? Now accounts for about 20% of their revenue. Over the last 8 years, they've sold over $1 billion of products related to this cleaning product without chemicals. Big deal. Big deal. Back 7, 8 years ago, I had the executives from Tennant come to my class. And this was when it was still just getting an inkling. And they were being hit with lawsuits right and left by their competitors who were saying, this is snake oil. This can't possibly be really cleaning. Because they were basically trying to undermine the credibility of this business. Okay. But part of Tennant's problem was, here's this cool technology. What do I do with it given the capabilities I have? This can be used for disinfecting, for cleaning vegetables and fruits, for produce, right? Food. It can be used for in hospitals, right? Lots of great ideas, big trends, but outside their capabilities. So they did do a little bit of licensing of their technology, but the fact is that there's actually multiple versions of this around. And they ended up staying focused on floor cleaning, but building a they still have the largest market share. The second largest, by the way, the second largest floor scrubbing company in the world is a Danish company whose US headquarters is here. Okay. Between them, they account for about 40% of the market. Okay. Now, the reason I have this ugly slide here, because one thing about Tennant is they have great vision. They are, they don't have people like some of the people in the room to really have cool materials. This is their vision, reinventing the future of cleaning. And there's two components of that, basically. One is about sustainability, not using chemicals, okay? The other is about e-commerce, actually. Because really, and this is not that different from agricultural implement dealers that are doing a lot with information technology inside the tractor. If you've ever gone and ridden one of these $750,000 tractors that go up and down the fields in North Dakota, it's just amazing the amount of technology and information that's flowing through. They're doing a similar thing here, okay? But here's my point. Chris Killingstad has engaged his entire organization around this vision of reinventing the future of cleaning. And they've got their set they've got their stretch goals. Right now their revenues are a little bit over 800 million, okay? They've got their initiatives. It is very clear what part you play to help grow this company. So if you have entrepreneurial spirit and you're an operator of that machinery or you're a salesperson of that machinery, you know where you're playing. You can focus a little bit more than if you didn't have a framework like this. Now let's talk about a downtown company, a cooler company in many respects. Anybody? Now I know there's one person from Target. Is anybody else here from Target today? Okay. Okay. So you have a different perspective. Or you were with Target when it was cool, right? It's like, do any of you do business with Target? A number of you probably do, right? Poor Target. Poor Target. Now, one of the things for us to keep in mind is we think of Target as really big because they have an iconic brand and they're headquartered here. Relative to Walmart, they're actually really small. They're a U.S. focused company. They don't have the discount club, the many other things that a Walmart has. Okay, so they are careful. They are careful. But they made a bold move with Canada, right? They had a big opportunity. And again, I had a bunch of MBA students who their thing was, I want to work in that Canada operation. And then I watched them suffer through that Canada operation. Okay? Now, if it had worked, it would have been amazing, right? And almost an instantaneous presence in the country next door. All kinds of operational issues that I won't get into. But the thing to keep in mind is it was a $5.4 billion write-off. Okay. That's kind of a, I don't know what you'd call it, a traumatizing kind of experience, right? And then what happens? The data breach. Okay? Somewhere between 40 and 110 million people affected. Okay? And finally, Mr. Steinhoffel, thank you. Steinhoffel finally leaves, although he was very key to an earlier reinvention of Target, which was when they added food. And when they added food to their stores, that was a very careful decision because they wanted to add food without becoming a Walmart or a supermarket. Okay? So, and they had a real clear vision about the guest experience. And things that you think of as sort of trivial were actually a big deal. Like, how wide should the aisles be? Okay? Because the wider the aisles, the more expensive, right? But the better the guest experience, so the less cluttered feeling that you might feel in a Walmart, as an example. Okay. Now, with this kind of experience, Target then took a very different approach towards entrepreneurship and innovation, because even though they also had some issues with their e-commerce at this time. We're talking about 3-4 years ago. Even though they were having these missteps, they knew they had to do something, right? So they took a different approach. They started making lots of little bets that were, in some cases, close to the core of the business. In other cases, very visionary. Very visionary. So the close to the core piece is Cartwheel, which is been a spectacularly successful app. Okay, how many of you use it? Yeah, yeah. And you know, it's kind of cool. You go around the store, it tells you what your opportunities are. Okay, but they also did some other things that were a little further afield. They did this thing out in California called Store of the Future, really thinking through what might the future look like in the world of retail. They had this thing called Goldfish. They hired entrepreneurs in residence. Goldfish was so secret that it's really not clear what it was. Okay. And then they also did a collaboration with MIT Media Lab on called Food Future, which was also really out there, really out there. Okay. And then they also did a kind of a cool thing with Techstars, and Techstars is a startup accelerator. And last summer they had a bunch of companies from around the world come here and work with mentors who were drawn from all over the Twin Cities. I know a number of them who had a great experience. And various executives from Target for these little startups to get to basically get oomphed up. And a number of them have actually now moved here to the Twin Cities permanently, which is very cool. And several of them now Target is a customer of theirs, and Target's going to be repeating this experience this year. Okay. But then something happened. This is Target sales and earnings before interest and taxes. And as you can see, the first couple of years with Mr. Cornell, the new CEO, actually things got better. But not this year, not 2016. Okay. So what happens when your profits go down? What do you cut? R&D, innovation, the stuff you think of as discretionary. Okay? So goodbye goldfish, goodbye store of the future, goodbye food, future food. Now, let me go back to my question before. The whole idea of when does it not make sense to have entrepreneurial spirit? Okay. Were those good ideas?
Yes,
They were good ideas because?
because they're trying to anticipate and test what will be successful in the future so that they're not followers.
Yeah. So one perspective is they're trying to get ahead of the competition. They're anticipating the future. Okay. There are others who would say those things were too long term. Target can't afford that right now, and it's happening at the expense of innovation that might be closer to the core business, at the expense of businesses and innovations like Cartwheel. Okay. Because one of the challenges here, when we think about setting the frame, okay, is people can, and this whole issue of discipline, is how do you connect it back to your strategy, and at what, and in fact, what time horizon do you have, okay? Now, one of the other things I wanted to point out to you is Target has their earnings have gone down, right? But note, this is earnings before interest and taxes in millions, okay? And that's a comma, not a period there, okay? Target made $5 billion last year. Target is not in trouble. Target has really smart people. Target is deluxe in 2005, 2006. Okay? So this is a roller coaster. They have smart people. There are other ways to innovate besides doing the way out type of stuff. Okay? Things that are closer to the core business, closer to the customer. More like what Best Buy has been doing over the last few years with great success. Great success. And that's the point of not random entrepreneurial spirit, but focused entrepreneurial mindset. Now, recently they put an investment into Casper online mattresses, and I have to be honest, I don't understand this, but they made $5 billion last year. Okay, they can afford $75 million to do an experiment. Okay, especially since it's kind of outside, they can be looking in. Another big experiment underway right now. Walmart bought an online retailer, right? Do you know who it is? Jet. They spent a few $1 billion on it, a couple billion. Okay. Jet is an online retailer that basically works to undercut Amazon. Okay. The cool kids from Carlson right now are going to work at Jet. They're not going to work at Target. Okay. Now, Target made $5 billion last year. Okay, I'm going to repeat that and repeat that. The point is they have resources, they have creativity, they have a great understanding of their customer. They have an unbelievable brand. So just as Deluxe was able to do the turnaround, Target is in a position to do that too. And so it's about channeling that entrepreneurial spirit for the employees there. So now I'm going to give you a little bit more of an organized framework about this. Okay. And I apologize, I can't, I wasn't able to break this out so we can show it in different pieces. Leading with an entrepreneurial mindset, setting the climate and orchestrating a process, not having it be random. Setting the frame, what are we trying to achieve? What are we trying to achieve? Tenant is reinventing the future of cleaning. Deluxe is about being a partner with small business. Okay? If you go get the book, you'll see a whole lot of specific tools for building out an inventory of potential opportunities. And then you focus on the best. And then the last one they talk about is adaptive execution, meaning not business as usual. Because the challenge with these little these experiments is that you can't really, they're not going to hit their milestones. They are not, if you throw a lot of overhead costs onto them, it's not going to work financially in the early days. Okay? So you need to be able to be a little bit flexible when you're focusing on developing these alternative opportunities side by side with the core business, which is what Deluxe has been doing. Still doing the check business, but adding on other businesses. The term that's often used for that is an ambidextrous organization. The core, where you just want to keep it going, be as efficient as possible, and then the new stuff. Okay. So what I'd like to do is finish by talking to you about the idea of, well, who can have this entrepreneurial mindset? And how do you apply it? And I'd like to share a story, actually, from the old days of American Express Financial Advisors, now Ameriprise. And one of the things that Rita McGrath and Ian McMillan really emphasize is that this framework can be applied at any level of an organization, from the lowest level to the CEO. We've been kind of taking a CEO view here. So I want to talk to you about back when I was a VP at Ameriprise, pre-Ameriprise, and I had a lot of different businesses kind of in my portfolio, okay? And this is more on the operational side of the business. And some of them were massive growth businesses, like one that in a year went from $100 million to $1 billion in assets. But believe me, that was quite a ride. That was an amazing and terrifying experience. But those were not my happiest employees. My happiest employees, you do these customer satisfaction surveys, right? Employee satisfaction surveys. My happiest employees were in a corner of the business that I kind of didn't pay attention to, okay? They were in a sucky business. Their job was to provide services to customers for the businesses that we were contractually obligated to keep going, but we were no longer selling. Okay? Which means that all these businesses could do was be to shrink. Okay? Why were these people so happy? I didn't understand this. So I had a policy. Because I had a whole variety of different lines of business reporting to me, I made a point of always having my office be at the furthest point away from the executive floor of the building, which at that point was in the IDS tower. So I was several buildings away, which meant I could sort of wander around between my different units on my way to different meetings. So this was my way of getting a feel for what was going on. And these people were so happy. And the reason and they also had phenomenal quality scores, customer satisfaction. They were just like a stellar group. The reason they were so happy was because they had an extraordinary supervisor who really understood how to channel the entrepreneurial spirit of a set of people in the context of a business that wasn't going anywhere. What an odd thought. What an odd thought. And what she did was really instill to them that they were the people taking care of this set of customers that no one else cared about anymore. That became the entrepreneurial frame. Okay? And as a result of that, they actually built business from those people these clients had other needs that they would actually help refer them to and build out, and keep them connected back to the company, despite the fact that that specific line of business wasn't working. But what she wasn't doing was telling them to, do something random. It was within the context, within that strategic frame. So when you think about your people that you've identified as your favorite entrepreneurs and their qualities, and you think about the entrepreneurial mindset, I'd like to also encourage you to think about, how can I be channeling entrepreneurial spirit within my own organization? Thank you.
Thank you, Carla. I know we are running a little short on time, but I do want to reserve a little bit of time for Q&A from the audience, and then we will wrap up just a little bit after 9. If you are on a schedule and need to leave, please feel free to do so. Rachel will be walking around with a mic, so if you have a question for Carla, please raise your hand.
Okay, I can be a little slow on this, so excuse me, but so Target, you're saying, is making money, but there wasn't that long ago companies like Sears, JCPenney were making a lot of money too.
Right.
Why are you so confident in Target? Is it because of their entrepreneurial mindset? Is that it?
My confidence okay, so Sears and Kmart basically became a form of financial engineering. They weren't really trying to build the business anymore, okay? I think the thing that, and again, this is through my view, through my MBA students, as well as what we all read in the press, is that I see an organization that understands its issues. They may not understand exactly what to do next, but they have some good feel of what those first steps are, and they've placed a few appropriate bets around innovation that can now, more like Best Buy did, build from the core, but still innovate and looking towards the future. Way in the back.
Thank you. So my question is, with Target, when you mentioned times were getting hard, they cut out a lot of their other entrepreneurial ventures like Goldfish.
Mm-hmm.
When do you start running the risk of cutting out that R&D and just completely falling behind the competition? Because I could also see that move by Target being a risky one, because if times are already hard and now they're not even looking to new entrepreneurial ventures for the future, couldn't that also contribute to them just falling behind too far to actually even stay competitive with the likes of Walmart and other companies that are trying to innovate?
Right. You're talking about this delicate balance. And Kmart, Sears are the example of truly cutting out looking at the future in any way. The challenge is with several of those earlier innovation initiatives was that they were so out there. It was not clear kind of where it would go. Or if they'd stayed with Canada, their estimate was that Canada would be profitable in about 7-8 years. Okay, that's a long time to wait. Okay, so you're absolutely right. You've got to be ambidextrous. You got to think about the future while you're also running your core business. The point of an entrepreneurial mindset is to connect it to the strategy, and not to have new ideas that it's pretty hard to figure out how you'd build it back into the business. Sometimes the new stuff that comes out is really cool, and it ends up being a spinning out totally out of another company. Here in the Twin Cities, we saw a lot of that years ago in the computer industry. Cray Research was a spin out from Control Data, as an example. But some of what they were doing didn't have that connection to the core.
How does this work for the small business? Same principles?
I think so. These are pretty generic. And part of it may be, what do I tell myself? You know, if you're such a small business that you're maybe you and a couple of other people. But giving yourself kind of a roadmap across these different elements helps, especially when there's the discipline of, oh, here's this new opportunity, a potential new customer. Does this make sense, or am I, you know, in a really good way, or am I rejiggering the business just to chase revenue? Okay, so that may in fact hurt me. That might be very expensive business to get. Okay, so I would argue that yes, it very much applies to smaller businesses.
Well, a little different twist, and again with smaller businesses. What do you see as the availability of venture and angel funding in the Twin Cities or the Minnesota, kind of this upper Midwest market?
Right.
And where do you see that going in terms of it increasing or decreasing?
So we've seen a shift here in the Twin Cities where we have not been as strong with venture capital, but we have gotten stronger and stronger with angel capital. And so more broadly for the audience, venture capital are, you know, formal partnerships, fiduciary responsibility to investors that more and more are investing in later stage companies, not in seed stage companies. And the angel investors have filled that gap. And so what we are seeing more and more is groups like Gopher Angels, Twin Cities Angels, Sophia Fund coming into this. Arthur Ventures is another, I think right now is considered the number one venture capital firm here in the state of Minnesota in terms of the dollars of investments it's done. So if you looked on a map of venture capital investment, yeah, we're like this, and California is like this. But our mix is different because it is more angel-oriented as opposed to institutional-oriented. But I personally see that it's improving.
Great.
Okay.
I think it's about time to wrap up today's program, but thank you all for being here.